Yeah, so I think it's a good time to kind of transition to the 2025 draft.
Yeah.
I imagine this has been a fun one for you to scout so far, Will, just because I think we talked to five different scouts, and I think they're going to have five different sets of rankings, which is always exciting to hear kind of where everyone stands on at least how
Mhm.
the first round's going to shake out. Because I've heard there's a drop off in this draft, and there's always a drop off, but it sounds like this one's a little earlier than most drafts. Um, but as of right now, it seems like the top four or five is pretty solidified. The one I want to start with is obviously the one that's been basically projected to go first overall as of late is Matthew Schaefer, the
Mhm.
defenseman. I mean, I've seen his tape; he's looked phenomenal. But I'm just going to be honest. I've never seen a player gain stock
Right.
after getting injured. So I just want to hear your take on him and kind of where you stand on him in regards to his draft class and maybe some comparables to his game.
Yeah, so right now, I would say that him and Michael Misa are like 1 and 1A to me. Like, you could
Taylor
argue,
versus Tyler,
yeah,
maybe.
like you could argue
Matt
either.
versus Michael.
Pretty much, maybe more on the level of like a Tavares Hedman level type thing, where you're like, if you took Hedman first overall in retrospect, you probably would also look pretty smart. But John Tavares is also a really freaking good hockey player. So, I think you look at a guy like Schaefer, who I do have number one, but it's really hard because he has been sick this year and then he got injured. I think he's coming back at some point in the near future. I hope he does because it would be nice to lay eyes on him a little bit more. But I mean, luckily the broken collarbone thing, like everybody does that and they're fine, right? Like it's not like this is something that's going to threaten his career. And when I watch Schaefer, I just see such a special offensive talent. Like he picks teams apart. He's a gunslinger of a passer. He is just so dynamic and can slice and dice through opponents, like an excellent puck carrier, but also passes the puck really well. Pinpoint passes almost all the time, sees his options, sees multiple options, and just is such a solid quarterback for your team from the defensive side of the game, right? Like, I think there are some areas where you can sort of go, like maybe this could be a little bit better, but what he brings to the game is really special. And he's also really young. Like, he is very close to being eligible for next year's draft. So to
Late
me, that,
2007 is
yeah,
crazy, by the way.
and yeah, exactly. Oh, I know. And he's playing a ton of minutes, and he does not look bad doing it, especially for a guy who had mono to start the year. We've had the pleasure of interviewing him on our channel, and he was great. Like, he knows what he's capable of. Like, he's not timid about what he thinks he's capable of, but he's a hardworking kid. There's a lot to love about him. It is just really hard. Like, for me, I don't think there's a question between him and a guy like James Higgins for me, but him and Michael Misa, based on what I've seen of Michael Misa, I mean, honestly, if I'm you guys, if I'm Chicago, I'm kind of hoping I don't have to make that decision and I just stay
They've
at
talked
2.
about that, yeah.
And you just go, I mean, if San Jose gets first overall or whatever, and
Yep.
they want Schaefer, I would think Michael Misa with Connor Bedard on the same team would be stupid. It would be stupid. But if Michael Misa goes first overall and, you guys get the sort of top pair, 200-foot, but maybe 60-40 offensive leaning, dynamic offensive guy in Matthew Schaefer, then there's that too. It's just really hard. Like, based on what I've seen of him this year, and after having seen him in person a couple of times, obviously there's just not that much concern about how he plays. But Michael Misa's growth has been remarkable this year in his game since last year even. And just seeing, I know it's not very good analysis, but I watch him play and I just go, God damn, that guy's good. Like, he's just good.
He's almost as good as Nick Lourdes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's like it's like, no matter the situation, no matter what, he is finding a way to score on you. Like, he can quarterback a rush, he can give and go the puck to someone else, he goes to the net, he can make plays in scoring areas, he can work along the boards. He does so many things for you that are always going to work. And the only thing that I've found that he doesn't really do is hit guys that much. But like, I don't care. It's not
Can't
really
hit when
his
you have the
job
puck all the
anyway, right?
time.
Like, like that's what Sam Savoy's for. Just, hey, little kid, go out there and crush everything that moves. That's your job. But with Michael Misa and Matthew Schaefer, it's almost like an impossible decision for an individual to make, if you ask me, right? Like, this is why I would want a group of people to sort of all bring a different perspective and a different viewpoint and go, well, we could use this guy. Like, to me, the easy decision would be Michael Misa. But from what I saw of Matthew Schaefer this season, it just sucks that he got injured. But I mean, I think it was very intriguing that the Canadian World Junior team, who had him on the team, looked completely lost and completely listless offensively without him on the team. And that is that really the biggest he's such a difference maker that losing him like broke their minds a little bit. Maybe, but even if he's close to that as a 17-year-old, I mean, there's a lot to play with there. There's a lot to love. And, I think at the end of the season, especially if he doesn't play a tremendous amount between now and the end of the year, it's entirely possible that I might just go, you know what? I know what I've seen out of Michael Misa. I know what he's capable of. And maybe I just go with something I'm more certain about. But honestly, I think I'm splitting hairs at that point. I think either of them will make extremely talented NHL players for sure.
So in terms of Schaefer's comp, like from everything you said, that sounds like Quinn Hughes. Like, at least in terms of driving offensive play. What would be your direct comp for Schaefer right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd go Quinn Hughes, because Quinn Hughes is smaller and more like of a dynamic, mobile skater. Like, Schaefer is more of just a northbound, like, get the puck up the ice but never dump it type guy. And I'm trying to think of an example in the NHL who's like that. Like, maybe you have like a Morgan Riley on steroids. You know what I mean? Like, someone who is an offensive leaning guy. Morgan Riley, when he's given the reins to sort of run a power play and sort of skate the puck himself, he can be really, really lights out. But if you add more, I would say, confidence, like goal scoring confidence and like inside driven scoring to his game, then I think you might get like a Schaefer, where it's, like, you watch him and you just go, you got to let him lean a little bit into the offense to get the most out of him, and you have to work around that. But if you do, it's going to be awesome. Like, it's really, really interesting. And so, I look at Chicago and I look at the sort of insulation style defenseman that you guys have, and I go, yeah, I think there's names on this roster that could offset a guy like that pretty well, and forwards that work hard enough off the puck to sort of allow him to be a little bit riskier and a little bit more confident, and you go from there and see how it goes. So yeah, I mean, I also kind of feel like, based on what I know of the NHL, he's one of those guys where it might just be, he's just Matthew Schaefer. Like, that's his style of play, and that's just what he is, but we'll see. I would love to see him again a couple of times before the end of the year, to say the least, because he's a heck of a player. And the last couple of games I saw of him, he was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, because Pierce and I have been talking about it all year. We've been seeing him rise up the rankings, and we haven't been able to really pick anyone's brain on as to why he's been rising. But from what it sounds like, he just sounds like he can take over a hockey game offensively.
Yeah.
And
You
need a player like that on the team, and to put a defenseman like that with a guy like Connor Bedard, I think that the opportunities are endless in that situation.
Yeah.
So
that's about right.
And the same could be said for Misa too. I think Misa opens up this offense to have multiple high-end forwards, and that's why it's like you said, if the Hawks are in second, I don't think they're mad with that. They're going to get someone very good in that situation. But in terms of like the people after that, when you're looking at like a James Higgins, a Porter Martone, and even an Anton Frondell, who do you think kind of separates himself from that little cluster of players right now?
Yeah, I mean, if the Blackhawks stay where they're at, and let's say someone vaults them in the lottery and they end up at like 3, I mean, I think there are 3 guys that could logically come up at that spot that I would be comfortable saying yes to, and that's Higgins, Martone, and Victor Eklund. I think Victor Eklund is also something that I think Chicago could use more of, right? A super energetic and aggressive, just bulldog style player who can also make plays and drive just really, really good possession results. Like a guy who makes other players better, isn't perfect, but I think moves things in the right direction far more often than he doesn't. With Higgins and Martone, I mean, I think with especially Higgins, I think you see a guy who I'm not totally sold on him being for sure a center in the NHL at the end of the day, but I do think he is a really, really talented playmaking forward who has a good fluid stride to his game, good skating ability, really times his passes really well, puts enough energy behind them to connect. And I think he just drives play really well. And I think he's also gained a little bit more physical confidence this season over the course of the year. He's taking hits a little better. He's, skating and looking off pressure a little bit better, and he's hitting guys a lot more than he was. So that's been nice to see, because I think that's something that he kind of needed in his game to sort of create room for himself and create opportunities for himself. Martone is going to be very interesting, because I came into the season fully on the Martone bus, right? I thought he was a guy who might be the first overall pick. And the more and more that I saw him this year, the more I kind of had to rethink the way I've been watching him since he was 16, but his game has kind of not really evolved the way that I thought it might. And the way that he was kind of advertised coming into the season was a little bit hard to level with and sort of understand. But now that I've seen him a little more, I think I've kind of adjusted a little bit, where the skill and the size is really good. He's a really good passer around the ice, sees the ice really well. And I think that he's a guy who the only thing that I think is an issue is just the speed at which he plays the game. He needs things to sort of go around him at a speed at which he's comfortable, because under pressure, he can, try to skill up the play and try to get through a guy and just not quite get there, but at the other side of the coin, he's one of those guys where when you watch him play, you go, I want to play with this guy. I know he'll be able to find me. I know he's a captain of a pretty good team in the OHL for a reason. He exudes that sort of, I hate to use intangibles as a word, but he does exude a level of leadership and stability when he's on the ice. And I think that there's a lot to that. It's not that he isn't a physical player either. I just don't think that that's a hallmark of his game right now. But again, he's a player who we interviewed, and I'm always really happy when I talk to a player or we talk to a player and he has a really strong understanding of his own limitations, right? He's a guy who's I think I'm really good. I think I am really skilled and I can score and I can set up a play. But I also know that I don't really play at a high enough pace to be a top level NHLer right now. I know I need to get quicker. I know I need to get more, finish my checks more and get stronger and really sort of make more of an impact that way. And that's exactly what you kind of hope a guy like that says, because you can kind of tell in his game that that's what's maybe missing a little bit. So any of those three guys, I think you can make a case for. After that point, it does open up real fast. I have a lot of guys ranked pretty high, pretty soon after those guys who might be late first round picks in reality, maybe. And I mean, I don't know. Those five guys at the top are all very intriguing for different reasons. The next few, I'd say, are also very solid players, but it really opens up really quickly after that. But I guess if you're Chicago, you don't have to worry so much, right? You only can go down 2 spots, so you'll get
They're pretty much locked in the top 5. Yeah. If they somehow don't end up with a top 5 pick, then
you'll end up with someone. If I'm you and I'm working for Chicago, I think if any one of those top 5 guys is a Chicago Blackhawk, I and there's even a couple of other guys where if they sneak into that conversation, I would be totally fine with it. But definitely any of those top 5, I'd go, yeah. I mean, great additions to a team that has a ton of young players and a ton of everything. That it just, it becomes an embarrassment of potential riches, so to speak.